I'm Vanessa, and I'm in Toronto. And in where I live now, we often do land acknowledgements as a way of acknowledging what Maria was just saying, that where we come from, and certainly from my tradition being someone who's actually come from Ireland and Scotland to settle on this land that we call Canada, is to acknowledge the first peoples who steward this land. And so I'm in Toronto, which are the traditional territories of the Mississauga of the New Credit, the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee. And those are just some of the names of the first peoples who have traditionally stewarded this land that we call Toronto. So I just wanted to bring that in to build on Maria's framing around working with natural cycles, or the navigating cycles of chaos and cycles of change. Is to also learn and to pay very, very close attention to what we already know around us. So our invitation for you today is also to tap into, what do you already know about cycles of change or navigating change? What do you know from your traditions, from how you observe land? I know that Dolores is here and she works with the Celtic wheel. So there are many, many things that we already know. And the invitation is to tap into what we know deeply already that we may have forgotten, but we're being reminded of again in these times. There are collective responses happening right now that are based on the root system, going into a root system, pulling the strength from it, and then creating new actions from it. And one of our colleagues speaks about, and I'm sure you heard this before, but responsibility is the ability to respond, and responding is different than reacting. And react, there's nothing wrong with reacting. It's a very instinctual thing, but it doesn't come from a place of wholeness. It comes from the limbic brain, which is a survival brain, which is very important. But responses come from a deeper well of wholeness, and it comes from connecting the past to the present to the future in the moment. So a response can be generative, meaning life-giving, as opposed to just survival. So it moves from survival to thriving. And a thriving response is one that brings in more life to move life in a direction of even more life. And that can include death. Death is a really important part. So sometimes we move towards life, meaning we will host a dying, but it also can mean we're moving towards life where we're including more voices, such as the mutual aid movements that we're seeing, to be able to respond to people who can only react for very good reasons. So I think this collective body, this collective responding, is growth based on learning and integrating something of value from a past experience that was damaging. So it's moving the damage into something that can be responsive. And I see that all over. And I love the way you just framed Ireland, that in cycles of despair or deprivation or oppression, that there's something very horrible that happens and people become depleted and damaged. And there's the reaching in to move forward from that and building more. So I just also wanted to bring in one idea of resilience. Often we say resilience is an ability to normalize something, to be able to respond from a place of strength. But in some of the languages from this land that are not my native languages, but Anishinaabe, for example, the words for resilience it's from the river, and it means to twist and turn and to keep moving. And so again, using your language, using your root systems, using your traditions to find ways of finding meaning through difficult times is really important. So I loved that, the twist and turn and the keeping moving. That's a little bit different than the English version of resilient, and it comes from the land. It's from the poet Mary Oliver, but she says, to live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your whole life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go.